Have you ever heard the saying, debt is the root of all evils? That is slavery, and it is true to some extent. But because being in debt means your life is finished, your debts are not waiting for you while you are trying to pay them. They are expanding on a daily basis since no one lends money for free. There is always a level of interest. Despite this, the United States has accepted the total US consumer debt is almost $15 trillion. This takes the average household debt to more over $5,300. The US GDP is little more than $21 trillion. That means the entire economy is made up of that. However, I have some wonderful news for you. Debt is not always a terrible thing. Debt is an unpopular opinion since the majority of our debt is bad debt. You most likely have credit card debt, a vehicle loan, and possibly educational debt, and you believe it will take decades to pay off all these debts. How can that possibly be beneficial? To appreciate how that can be a good thing, consider how people with a lot of money nevertheless use debt to make even more money. It may appear perplexing, because why would anybody with a lot of money use debts in the first place? This is meant to be used by those without money, right? That is not how money works. If you know how to use it, debt is a powerful tool. And in this video, you will learn how wealthy people use debt to produce even more money. So give this video a thumbs up and let us get started. Number 1. Borrowing. The majority of trade is based on debt. Borrowing money to start a business is a terrible idea, which may sound unusual, and I would never do something like that. However, there are some firms, particularly conventional businesses, where employing debt is the best solution. Let us imagine you wish to sell pens. They are a highly common product with a consistent demand. Ideally, you would fly to China and locate a factory that manufactures that type of pen at a reasonable price. You would buy a container of pens, transport them to the United States, and distribute them to your consumers. But this is now primarily done online through platforms like Alibaba, unless it is a more difficult product that requires you to fly to the plant. But here's the catch. You do not have to pay for the things in order to get them first. Allow me to explain. China has become the world's factory in the last 50 years, producing literally everything. Thousands of factories operate around the clock to manufacture everything the world requires. Therefore, in order to make it easier to sell, most of these firms would gladly loan you their items in exchange for future payment. Of course, they will not lend to strangers, so you must first establish trust with them. However, that is how business has been conducted for the past 50 years. When the client sells the products in the United States or elsewhere in the world, he pays the factory and borrows more products. You are simply saying the factory, you know how to make it, so let me help you sell it. If I can sell it for anything above this price, that is going to be my profit. What makes this technique fantastic is that you are not tying up your own money in this transaction. That is why selling is one of the most important skills you should learn. Number 2. Refinancing. Real estate loans are the best type of debt since they are filled with loopholes. You are paying extra taxes if you do not have a mortgage. Rich folks always have many mortgages in order to take advantage of all of the deductions. Remember that every dollar you were meant to pay in taxes, but instead saved, is an extra dollar earned. So that is another way for wealthy individuals to get even wealthier. But here's a more practical approach. This is essentially how rich individuals become more rich in real estate. Assume you save $200,000. That is a large sum of money, yet, to be honest, it is peanuts. You cannot even afford to buy a house. Of course, a mortgage of up to $800,000 is out of the question, because you must make a 20% down payment. But here's the catch. Assume you discover a property worth $500,000. It is in poor shape and requires some, if not extensive, renovation. You go to the bank and get a mortgage with a 20% down payment. Assume you're planning to spend 10% of the entire cost of the house to renovate it. or $50,000 USD. You return to your bank, this time to refinancing your mortgage. When you acquired your first mortgage, the property was only worth $500,000 because it was in such horrible shape that no one wanted to live there. However, now that you have refurbished it, there are others interested in renting it out. So, let us imagine the market worth of that home climbs to $700,000. Let us imagine you are planning to get an 80% mortgage for the first time. However, 80% of $700,000 is $560,000. $400,000 of that money will go to your first bank, which provided you with your first mortgage. Deduct another $50,000 for renovation costs, and you will have a profit of $100,000. You made a total of $100,000 with debt, and you are left with a property that you can rent out to create passive income and grow equity. Furthermore, because you have a mortgage, you will avoid paying taxes. This is a popular technique among property investors. Do you actually see that now, if debt is bad? I will leave it to you to comment in the comment section below. If you're enjoying the video so far, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. That will surely help us a lot. Number 3. Hedge funds. Hedge funds are created by the rich, for the rich, in order to make the rich even richer. They often use unpopular techniques. Mortals like me and you do our best attempts to anticipate which firms will expand and gain in value. And we invest the money we work so hard to earn in the hopes that these companies will grow. However, hedge funds often use a completely opposite strategy. They attempt to make profits when businesses fail or go bankrupt, as was the case with GameStop. Although, in that case, the internet posed a problem to hedge funds, causing them to lose nearly $13 billion. But how do hedge firms profit from debt? Let us say you expect a certain stock, such as Facebook, to fall because you know that Apple, the maker of the most popular smartphone, will announce next week that they will no longer allow apps to track you, such as Facebook or Instagram, to track your online activity and will prioritize privacy, which will severely harm Facebook's business model. So you pick up the phone and call your broker to borrow a single Facebook stock, say for $100, and immediately sell it on the open market for $100. Congratulations, you have $100 in your wallet, but you still owe your broker one Facebook stock. Assume you were correct and Facebook's stock price falls to $70 the next week. You use that $100 to buy one Facebook shares for $70 because the price has decreased. Then return it to your broker and pocket the difference. Congratulations for making $30 on a value drop of stock. In theory, it appears simple, but in practice, it is very tough and risky. What happens if you are incorrect? What if the price doubles in an instant? You must still return that single Facebook stock to your broker and pay interest on the loan. Now, you must buy that stock back for $200 in order to return it to your broker. When you buy a stock and try to sell it when it increases, the most you can lose is the amount you invested in, but not when it comes to shorting. If the price continues to rise, so will your losses, because the stock price can theoretically climb indefinitely. You can make unlimited losses. However, if you have 100 analysts working for you, this method can make you a fortune. Number 4. Forex. A forex market is a market in which currencies are traded. It enables international trade. In China, you can use US dollars. To pay your staff in China, for example, you must purchase Chinese yen. As a result, there is a market where anyone or any company may come in and buy foreign currencies. These currencies change due to a variety of circumstances. For example, if the Fed raises interest rates, the supply of dollars in the market will be limited, making the US dollar stronger against foreign currencies or vice versa. You may make a lot of money in this market if you can predict which currencies will climb or decrease. But what distinguishes these markets from the rest is that for every dollar you use to trade in Forex, you can borrow an additional $100. That means you can hold a position worth $100,000 if you trade with $1,000. If you wind up making a modest profit, say 1%, it will be enormous. Number 5. Credit score. As you can see, debt is a strong tool that is used by every successful firm or entrepreneur in a variety of ways. Borrowing money to finance purchase orders is something that almost every firm does, especially if you have a proven business model. Stop assuming that all debt is evil. Bills with a high interest rate, such as credit card debts, are, of course, terrible. However, in order to obtain reduced interest rates, you must reduce the risks associated with lending you money. How do you go about doing that? You establish a track record as a trustworthy borrower. There are billions, if not trillions of dollars in banks just waiting to be borrowed. Even if there is no money, banks can produce money from thin air. Hope this video will be valuable to you to understand various aspects of money. Make sure to comment below your opinion related to the points discussed so far. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.